like to welcome everybody that's been waiting for the open house to begin. I'm Brandon Coates. I'm going to give it a few more minutes here while the attendees are kind of populating in there. Make sure we give folks just a couple of minutes to get in here, and then we'll go ahead and begin the presentation. All right, looks like they've slowed up, so we'll go ahead and get started. I want to thank you all for joining us for the virtual open house for the MT37 Bridge Preservation Project. We'll be following the presentation portion with a live question and answer session. During this online session, MDT and the project team is going to provide an overview of the project and then talk about some of the planned construction activities for this highway. The live question and answer session, it'll be held immediately following the presentation. You can participate in that by locating the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that button that says Q&A, you should pop up a box, and that will allow you to type in any questions throughout the presentation and submit them. Those will come into us, and we'll hold those questions and then answer them all at the end of the presentation. So I'll try to give you a notification a couple of times during the presentation, a little reminder to submit your questions as we go. And then again, at the end of the session, we'll be available as well. This online session is being recorded, and we'll have a copy of the recording posted to the project website following today's online meetings. We have the meeting here from noon to 1, and then there's another one this evening from 6 to 7 p.m. I'd like to invite you to ask your neighbors and coworkers or friends that couldn't attend the noon presentation to join us at 6 p.m. It will be the same presentation and same content. And then if they're not available today for either online sessions, we are going to be holding an in-person open house Thursday this week, April 27th at the Lincoln County High School. And we'll be providing the same presentation and information as a display, and the project team will be there to answer questions if you want to attend that meeting. There won't be a presentation at that open house. It's open from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. so you can stop by anytime in between those hours and view the project information and get your questions answered. So at this time, I'd like to turn the microphone over to the MDT Missoula District Administrator, Bob Vosen. Bob?
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to thank everybody for joining us today as we start bringing you some information about a project that I know many people are excited to hear about. The Highway 37 corridor is an area that MDT recognizes. We've got quite a bit of work to do in the area, a challenging chunk of road to work on. A huge part of the challenge is the fact that it is not really close to a lot of our supplies and our offices, so it's a challenge with its remoteness. So again, as Brandon said, my name is Bob Vosen. I'm the administrator for the Missoula District, which includes Western Montana, west of the Continental Divide. I'm based out of Kalispell, and I am quite familiar with Highway 37. It's a beautiful part of our state and of the Missoula District that I'm fortunate to get to review and travel through with some frequency. So I also want to introduce the team today. MDT has a great staff. We've got a great project team, and some of our members will be introducing themselves shortly. But we also have, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, an engineering company, Forsgren, working with us. They bring some expertise and additional manpower for when MDT is short-staffed or have a heavy workload, or we're looking for expertise that maybe our bridge engineer staff doesn't have. And then, as you can also see, we have RBCI, Brandon Coates, that was speaking moments ago, is with RBCI, and they help us engineers tell our tale to the folks of what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and make sure that we're reaching out in an acceptable fashion. So I'm going to let each of the members of the team introduce themselves, and I'm going to pass this over to Dwayne Wilson, our Missoula District Bridge Engineer. So Dwayne.
Thanks, Bob. Yep, I'm the Missoula District Bridge Section Supervisor here in the Bridge Bureau. I'm based out of Helena, and my role is to kind of oversight on this project, review what the Forest Grin team provides. And so the MDT bridge.
Forgot to unmute myself there, so
Oh, go ahead.
apologize, everybody. I was talking to a muted microphone. The next member of the team, I guess we'll turn it over to Ben.
Oh, hello. My name is Ben Rickman. I work in MDT's Consult Design Bureau, and I am the department's project manager for this project.
All right, thanks, Ben. Joel, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Joel Boucher. I'm the acting pre-construction engineer for the Missoula District. I'm also based out of Kalispell, and yeah, excited to be here with you guys today.
Thanks, Joel. Brent.
Yeah, my name is Brent Schiller. I was the project manager for Forest Grin Associates.
All right, thanks, Brent. And moving on to Brett. Are you there, Brett?
Good afternoon. Sorry, my name is Brett Broadhead. I'm with Forest Grin out of the Boise office, and I'm the lead engineer that was in charge of the inspections of the structure and ultimately the design and repair work and preparation of the plans for this project.
All right, thanks, Brett. Dan, you're up next.
All right, my name is Dan Gars. I'm responsible for the roadway portion of the design as well as the traffic control.
Great, thanks, Dan. Pat?
Hi, my name is Pat Wickman with Forest Grin Associates. I'm an environmental scientist, and I led the preparation of the environmental documents for the project.
All right, and looking at who else do we have on that I have missed? I think I've covered everybody. Did I miss anyone of the team? If so, I apologize.
Bob, I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself again.
Okay, great.
I didn't introduce myself very well at the beginning. I'm Brandon Coates with RBCI. Like Bob mentioned, we're working on the public involvement, public outreach on this project. So we're the communication piece, and we help MDT and the project team get information out to the public, and then also gather input from the public to relay back to the project team. So we're kind of the first contact on this project specifically, and we can help get questions answered later down the road as we go too. So thank you.
Thanks, Brandon. And at this point, I'll turn the mic over to Dwayne Wilson, who can start talking a little bit about the project details.
Okay. So the MDT Bridge Bureau is tasked with keeping Montana's bridges safe, resilient, economical, and reliant. The Bridge Bureau is organized into two sections, the Bridge Management section and the Bridge Design section. MDT's Bridge Management section provides condition inspection and load rating evaluation for over 4,500 public bridges in the state, which includes state, county, and city-owned bridges. The Bridge Management section also evaluates and analyzes overweight permit loads and performs bridge maintenance on state-owned bridges. MDT's Bridge Design section provides design and engineering management on bridge replacement, rehabilitation, and preservation projects. The bridge design section also establishes and maintains design criteria and standards, participates in research projects, and promotes design initiatives to improve bridge performance and value. So at this time, I think I'll turn the mic over to Ben Rickman from MDT.
Yeah, thanks, Dwayne. MDT is in the final stages of developing improvements to 11 bridges on MT-37 between Libby and Eureka. The bridges are safe to drive on, but they're aging and in need of repairs and routine upkeep. Most of the bridges were built between 1959 and 1974. MDT routinely inspects, makes repairs, and performs preventative maintenance to Montana's bridges to extend their service life, similar to the care that you take on your automobile. This work also ensures Montanans receive the best return on our bridge investments. MDT has partnered with Forsgren Associates to identify and develop plans for the needed repairs that will extend the life of the bridges. Slide, please. Let's see. This project includes a two-phased approach, an evaluation phase and a design phase. The evaluation phase started in 2020 and included office and field evaluations of the bridges. All of the information from the evaluations was carefully considered to develop repair and rehabilitation needs and was documented in a draft bridge report. The findings and recommendations from the draft report was presented to the public in the fall of 2020. The design phase began in 2021 and will be completed in 2023. And in this phase, we develop the design plans for the recommended improvements. The intent of today's meeting is to share the final improvements and gather public comment prior to finalizing the design. The current schedule suggests that the earliest construction could occur is in 2025. However, construction is dependent on the availability of funding and will be scheduled once design plans are finalized. I'm now going to turn the microphone over to Pat Wickman from Forsgren Associates to tell you about the environmental study.
Thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone. So as part of any federally funded project, in this case, funding from FHWA, the Federal Highways Administration, MDT needs to ensure that the project is compliant with the National and Montana Environmental Policy Acts, often referred to as NEPA and NEPA. So to ensure that this multiple bridge replacement project is compliant, MDT had Forsgren conduct a site investigation in each of the bridges to look for potential environmental concerns, to coordinate with state and federal agencies, as well as to document that environmental baseline at each of the bridges. These investigations were followed by preparing a number of technical reports and an evaluation of environmental, social, and economic effects of the proposed actions, as well as recommendations to protect the environment. The MT-37 project's environmental study evaluated the following items. First, compliance with the Endangered Species Act for the handful of listed species identified near the bridge sites. These included grizzly bear, bull trout found in the creeks and waterways underneath the bridges. To this end, MDT coordinated with the Fish and Wildlife Service to mitigate any potential for impact. We also looked at the Migratory Bird Treaty Act to ensure compliance, to make sure there was no impacts to the swallows that often nest underneath these bridges. We also had protection of aquatic resources to ensure that the waterways and fish that may be present under 9 of the bridges that are over open water are protected and impacts are avoided, as well as the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act, as bald eagles were identified near the northernmost bridge. Lastly, from hazardous materials, some of the bridges did have lead paint found on their railings, so those would be captured and removed accordance with OSHA standards. There's also testing for asbestos in the concrete making up the bridges. None was found, as well as the 3 southernmost bridges are located within the Libby Superfund site. So a special provision was included in the specifications for the project in case any ground disturbance is necessary near those bridges. in conclusion, I would like to now turn the microphone over to, I believe, Brett Broadhead from Forest Green to tell you more about the evaluation of the bridges.
Thanks, Pat. So the primary purpose of the work that Forest Green was in charge of was to inspect the bridge and find any existing damages or repairs that were needed so that we can increase the lifespan of each bridge and continue to give the public a safe roadway to travel on in this corridor. To do this, what we did is we started with the inspection of each structure, and this began with a review of the data that's available, basically the history, all of the information that's been compiled about each structure. We took that information and then also was able to go out and speak with MDT maintenance crews and get some local hand knowledge on each structure to kind of determine what things were happening on each structure and what repairs have been done and what the local people dealing with the bridges every day felt like they needed to have done to expand these lifespans of the bridges. So once we got that data, we went out and did an inspection of each structure throughout that corridor. These inspections consisted of generally 2 tasks. The first task was we did some general coring of the decks. And we did this because there's a lot of snow and a lot of de-icing salts being used out there. So we wanted to see the levels of chloride and de-icing and icing that was inside the deck. And this is what was causing a lot of the damage we were seeing. So after that, we did what we called, we chained each deck. And it's a sounding treatment. We basically inspected every inch of the deck. What this does is it allows us to find the lamination in the deck. And the lamination is basically just damages below the surface of the deck that haven't resulted to a pothole or loss of concrete section of the deck. So we performed this on all of the structures that we visited. And at the same time, we went out and looked at general railing information and also some of the traffic control information or environmental impacts that needed to be done on each structure. With these two, once we finished these inspections, we came up with basically 2 types of repairs that were needed throughout the corridor on these 11 bridges. One of them was a patch and overlay. And this is just a removal of the top surface of the traveling deck. Gets rid of the damaged surface, and then we put back a new surface, increasing that deck's lifespan. The next was a little bit more involved, and that was a complete deck replacement of some of the bridges. And this was being done because there was higher damages and higher concentrations of chlorides deeper into the deck. So slide 2, please. So as you can see here on the left, some of the pictures that we took out there, this is the general condition of the decks that we found. A lot of them had potholes, and MDT maintenance staff over the years has been doing a great job going out and filling those potholes. You can see the black, trying to keep the traveling services good. But as the chlorides continue to get high and the delamination happened, we continued to see more potholes and more maintenance that's needed. So on the right of this slide, you'll see the orange bridges. We determined that 5 out of the 11 bridges on this corridor needed to have a patch and overlay. These bridges had concentrations in the top levels of the deck, and we found that it was pretty easy to get in and remove the top 2 inches of the deck. We were able to put back that deck and give it a good traveling surface. So we found that these 5, and it was Sutton Creek, 5 Mile Creek, the Kootenai River Bridge, and then the 2 bridges in Libby, one over the railroad and one over the river, would receive those treatments. And then the third slide, please. The remaining bridges were in a little bit worse condition, as you can see by the pictures here. More extensive potholing, more extensive repairs that were occurring on these. So we took all the information we had, and we found that the delamination and the chlorides were deeper into the deck. This caused us, this was basically we were unable to remove all of it with just a couple inch removal. So this forced us to remove the deck completely and put back a new deck and railing on each structure. The 6 bridges you can see were Tobacco Creek, Pinkham Creek, Cadet Creek, Rot Gut, 10 Mile, and Cripple Horse. all of these bridges will have new decks, have the decks completely removed and new decks placed onto the existing structures. And at this time, when we do also when we do these decks, it also gives us a chance to upgrade some of the railing on some of the decks, get it up to current standards, and get all of the other improvements that are needed on the roadway for safety. So from here, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Gars, and he'll give you the requirements for our traffic control and how we are anticipated to get the work done on each structure.
All right, thank you, Brett. So first of all, I'm going to do an overview of the 4 slides I'm going to be presenting on. The first slide is what the traveling public may expect throughout the construction process. The next slide will be going into a little bit more detail about the 2 bridges in Libby. The third slide will be going over the remaining 9 bridges to the north of Libby. And then the final slide I'll be discussing will go into a little bit on the phasing for this project. So what to expect during the construction on the 2 bridges, for all the bridges. I want to start off by first saying that there will be no bridge closures as part of this project. With that, each bridge will have 1 lane open to the traveling public. That open lane will be controlled using temporary traffic control signals. These traffic control signals will actually have sensors that allow them to detect the presence of cars waiting to go through the work zone. In addition to all of that, there will be reduced speeds affiliated with the work zones, as is typical for a lot of roadway projects. We anticipate up to 15-minute delays with a few of the bridges. We'll go into that to a little bit more detail on a later slide. And there will be width restrictions as part of the bridge work. The width restrictions will be dependent on the bridge location as well as the phase of construction the bridge is in. Next slide, please. All right, so moving on to the anticipated traffic control for the 2 bridges in Libby. The phasing for these 2 bridges is going to be that the bridges will be rehabilitated at the same time. This will be done to 1, reduce overall construction time, and 2, allow the contractor to be a little bit more efficient with the bridge work being completed, which will then reduce cost and the burden to the Montana taxpayer. The traffic control will be controlled using 2 signals as discussed on the previous slide. And then in addition to the 2 signals on the south and north side of the bridges, there's actually an intersection between the 2 bridges. These roads are City Service Road and Thomas Street. These intersections will be controlled with temporary traffic control signals or flagging as well. I want to state that access to the private and public properties accessed via Thomas Street and City Service Road will remain throughout the construction process. We are estimating the project to take around 2 months for these 2 bridges in Libby. So that's 2 months overall for both bridges to be rehabilitated. And there will be a 12-foot lane available to the public throughout the construction process. Next slide, please. So following the 2 bridges in Libby, we have a remaining 9 bridges to the north. So these bridges all have different lengths, they have different spans, and then the bridge decks, as Brett had discussed previously, are in various states of being. So with that, construction time varies between 4 to 6 months per each bridge. So I want to say that again, each bridge will have a construction time that will take around 4 to 6 months, depending on the overall size of the bridge and the work being completed. On a few of the bridges, there is a minor roadway work being done to meet up the new bridge deck. The work will only extend 1 to 200, or actually 200 feet beyond the bridge. I want to point out that these are pretty short work zones at each individual site, and since the work zones are so short and the geometry is relatively simple, we're anticipating shorter delays of 5 to 10 minutes on these bridges. And with that, I'd like to transfer to the next slide, please. So phasing for the project, these bridges will be grouped for bid to the contractor. The reason why MDT is going to elect to do this would be to go ahead and allow construction to be a little bit more efficient. Again, doing all of these bridges in one season would be difficult for contractors, as well as reduce the overall delay to the traveling public on Montana 37. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and hand it off to Brandon.
Thanks. So at this time, we're getting close to wrapping up the presentation portion. And so I'd like to remind you to locate that Q&A button that's on the bottom of your screen and go ahead and submit any comments that you may have at this time. We have a few more slides we'll run through here, but just want to make sure you are aware of that button and are able to submit any questions you may have had so far. So as we kind of discussed earlier in the presentation, we're in the final design phase of the project, and the current schedule suggests the earliest construction could occur is 2025, as was previously mentioned, and that construction is dependent on the availability of funding and will be scheduled after the final design plans are complete. Once the project is let for bid and a contractor is selected, MDT will provide additional notifications and outreach to inform the public about construction. So once we have that information, that will be coming back out probably in a similar manner that you heard about today's meeting. Keeping the public informed throughout the project is a priority for MDT. Public involvement that we collect today as part of these open houses, as well as the open house later this week, will be considered in the final development of the design and the planning for construction. There's a variety of methods that will be used for communicating to the public during construction. Some of those include online and in-person meetings and direct mail, postcards, the news media, social media, and then oftentimes during construction, there's an email and text messaging availability to get weekly updates about construction activities and traffic impacts. And so that information will be available as it gets closer to construction. Those numbers and how to sign up for that will be included. Another really good tool for staying up to date on construction and weather and just road conditions throughout Montana is the 511mt.net website. There's an online version or a desktop version. And there's also an app you can download, but there's links and toggles inside of that app that you can turn on construction notifications, and that'll provide you updates where construction's taking place and what kind of delays and impacts you can expect to see. With that, I want to thank everybody again for participating in today's meeting and the development of this project. Again, now's the time to find that Q&A button and at the bottom of your screen and submit any comments or questions that you may have. And we'll go ahead and start answering those questions in a moment. In order to stay informed, the website information is on the screen currently. It's the same website that you probably went to sign up for the meeting, and that's where we'll post the recording as well after the meeting. My contact information is on the screen. Again, I'm Brandon Coates. I'm the Public Involvement Manager for RBCI. My email is brandon@rbci.net, and my phone number is 406-465-3350. With that, I think we're going to see if we have some questions coming in, and Tyler is going to help us with facilitating those questions. So, Tyler, do you have any questions so far?
Yes, Jacob asks, is it safe to assume letting will be in Q1 2025? And Jacob had a second question, a follow-up of schedule was briefly discussed. At this time, does the EOR have an anticipated cost for construction? And Bob's going to answer those for him.
So Jacob, thanks for the questions. Great questions. The first question is about when is the letting going to be? And tentatively, we plan to let this project late in the fall of 24 to allow for construction in 25. Again, we're quite a couple years out. That's where we currently appear to have funding. But as we continue on towards final design, final permitting, all of those other challenges, that is still a somewhat fluid date. But we're hoping to start. Be ready to start construction early as possible in 25. So we actually would like to let that thing late in 24. And as far as cost, again, we're boy, I'll tell you what, the way prices, the variability of prices and stuff, to have a final estimate that we're ready to go forward with, we're nowhere near that at this point. We've got what we call a planning level estimate. We've got a budgeted amount, and the number that I guess I'm comfortable to share at this point is we're hoping to be somewhere in the $25 to $30 million range for the project. But again, there's a lot of time and a lot of things can change between now and when we get to that letting date. So we'll continue to be working to refine that as we move forward.
Okay, thanks, Bob. We had a question from Gary that said, will we be incorporating a barrier like a filter cloth or a rubber barrier in the deck to preclude or stop chloride infiltration in the lower portion of the deck? That is, confine the chloride infiltration and damage to the portion above the barrier, like the top couple of inches. And it looks like Brett's going to answer that question.
So we will not be putting in a barrier or anything like that at the deck. What we're going to do to try to, first, we're going to remove all of the chlorides. That's why we cored them. So we got a pretty good idea of the levels that they're going in, of the, how heavy the concentrations are in each level of the deck. So what our plan is to do is to increase the cover and the thicknesses of the deck which will stop the chloride from reaching the reinforcement steel inside the deck and causing some of that delamination. So we found that with a different mix and a few other things, that this will really help stop that chloride and help preserve the deck.
Thank you, Brett. And Jacob had a follow-up question. He said, will the contracts be evaluated based on cost alone, or will schedule have an impact? And Jacob also said, thank you for your time today and the answers to these questions. And Bob is going to take that question.
Again, Jacob, thanks for the question. We will be awarding this contract based on a low bid situation. We don't have an A plus B set up for this right now, where there's a second component for timing. We will, as was discussed in the presentation, though, have some milestones that have to be hit to keep the contractor on schedule. And as we work on developing the contract, getting closer to the letting, that's something that we'll look at is how much workload there is in each of the phases, and what kind of a incentive and deduct we may want to associate with different phases, and see if just to make sure we come up with the best contract possible for the taxpayers and the contractors. We want to make sure we come up with something that is fair to everyone, recognizing that this is a large project, but in a challenging area. We want to make sure that we balance cost versus schedule, and it's always a fine line. And also we want to make sure that we don't make our contracts really stringent on time and really challenging, because then that can reduce the number of contractors that want to go after a project like this as well. So it's trying to make sure we get the best fit for every contract that we have.
Thank you, Bob. And Gary had a follow-up question. He wanted to ask if the overlay will be concrete or asphalt, and Brett is going to answer that one.
All the overlays that we're planning on putting on the deck will be concrete overlays. We're going to get rid of some of the asphalt overlays that are out there currently, increase that thickness, like I said, and just put back concrete, which will preserve the deck better and should do the job.
Thank you, Brett. And we don't have any more questions at the moment. If anyone has a question, just type it into the question and answer box and I will see it.
Yeah, thank you all again. We'll give it a few minutes here in case any questions come up. And then we'll go ahead and conclude early if there aren't any. I did also want to mention that my contact information is on the screen. So if you have questions later that you want to get answered, go ahead and email those to me, and I'll work with the project team to get those answered and get back to you. It does look like for Dwayne, did you have something that you wanted to add in on the last question?
That's just
Sure.
for me. You just reminded me. One thing it will also do in the new decks is place epoxy coated rebar, which will also help protect all the steel in there. So that's another upgrade that the new decks will be getting.
Thank you for that, Brett.
And just as a quick follow-up, Gary did say thank you for taking the time to answer his questions. And we had another question from Scott. Scott asked if a time frame for completion of this project can be estimated at this time. Who would like to answer that question?
I can speak to that a little bit. This is Ben Rickman. I mean, we certainly have to have the design of the project completed kind of before we move into the letting stage of the project, which we talked about earlier being in the fall of 24. Right now we have I guess a tentative schedule where the design of the project would be completed this summer. However, if there are any kind of changes that come about as part of plan reviews, that could add on to the development timeline of the project. But our goal would certainly be to have plans absolutely finalized during I guess, before the fall of 24.
Thank you, Ben. And I don't see any additional questions at the moment. So if you have a question, go ahead and type it in the box now.
And Tyler, this is Bob. I just want to add, for the folks that are on the call, we are going to be looking at we're always looking for additional funding sources on this project. We are working to apply for some additional discretionary grants through the FHWA program, the U.S. Department of Transportation, as part of the it's now a couple-year-old the Infra Funding Act. But that being said, on this project, we also have additional highway projects coming up in the area. The summer of 23, we're going to be looking at doing a mill fill, which is where we'll remove some of the asphalt and put new asphalt down. And that's going to be from the dam going north for, I think it's 10 or 12 miles. And then next year, we're going to be doing a cold in place recycle starting at the other end of the road up by Rexford and headed south for about the same distance. So with those two projects going on, we have to make sure that we don't have contractors getting in each other's way and slowing down the process. It would cause some logistical challenges for one contractor to be trying to get concrete hauled through another contractor's paving operation, or for bridge work to be taking place in the middle of a paving operation. So we're going to be staggering the work, trying to get a lot of work done, as I said, on Highway 37 in the next several years.
Thank you, Bob. Gary had another question. He said similar repairs are needed at the Granite Creek Bridge near the MDT State Shop south of Libby. Will MDT consider doing something with this bridge in the future? And Dwayne is going to answer that.
Sure. Yeah, what we do is we take a look at the conditions of bridges around Missoula District and then the other districts in the state. And then every few years, we do a nomination process where we'll take and look at the highest priority bridges and put those together in future projects. So at this time, we haven't firmed up the next round of nominations and priorities, but we'll definitely take a look at this bridge and see where it falls.
Thank you, Dwayne. And once again, we have no questions in the hopper. So if you have a question, go ahead and type it into the Q&A box now. And Scott said thank you.
All right, I guess I want to go ahead and thank everybody again. We'll stay here for a couple more minutes, see if any questions come in. But if you feel like you've had your questions answered, you can go ahead and jump off at any time. There won't be any more presentation, but we'll hang out here for a couple of minutes, see if we have any questions, and then we'll go ahead and conclude the presentation. Again, like I said, at 6 to 7 p.m. tonight, we'll be doing the same presentation. And then if you would like to come to the Lincoln High School in Eureka for our in-person meeting, that is from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. on Thursday. So we'll have the same display board information, and folks from the project team will be there to answer questions there as well. So. And thank you all for attending.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Seeing no more questions, we're going to go ahead and conclude. Thank you.